Why do you exhaust yourself chasing what could flow to you effortlessly? Right now, as you sit here, you're working against the very force that wants to give you everything you desire. You push when you should yield. You strain when you should surrender. You fight when you should flow. Raise your hand if you believe hard work is the only path to success. Keep it up if you've ever felt frustrated that your efforts aren't matching your results. Now ask yourself this question: what if everything you've been taught about achievement is backwards? The universe operates on principles that seem to contradict common sense. Water carves through solid rock, not through force, but through persistent, gentle pressure. The mightiest oak grows not by struggling against the earth, but by relaxing its roots deeper into the soil. Your desires follow the same natural law. You are responsible for one thing and one thing only: your inner state, not the economy, not your circumstances, not other people's opinions, not the timing of opportunities. Your inner state creates your outer world with the precision of mathematical law. When you relax into this truth, rather than resist it, you align with forces so powerful that what seemed impossible. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman who spent 12 years climbing the corporate ladder, working 16-hour days, networking until exhaustion, applying for promotion after promotion. She measured her worth by her effort. The harder she worked, the more worthy she felt. Yet the positions she wanted consistently went to others who seemed to put in half the effort. She was trapped in the illusion that strain equals gain. One evening, after another rejection, Sarah sat in her car, crying from pure exhaustion. In that moment of complete surrender, she asked a different question: what if I'm approaching this all wrong? 3 weeks later, without changing her strategy or increasing her efforts, she received an offer for a position better than anything she had previously pursued. The difference: she stopped trying to force outcomes and started allowing them to unfold. This is not a story about luck or coincidence. This is about understanding how manifestation actually works. Your desires already exist in potential form. They are waiting for you to create the proper conditions for their appearance. Those conditions have nothing to do with how hard you work and everything to do with how aligned you become. Think of a magnet. Does it strain to attract iron filings? Does it exhaust itself with effort? No, it simply maintains its magnetic field, and attraction happens naturally. You possess the same power. When you relax into your desires instead of grasping for them, you become magnetic to their fulfillment. But here's where most people stumble. They mistake relaxation for passivity. They think allowing means doing nothing. This is not about becoming lazy or passive. This is about becoming precisely active. This is about effort that flows from inspiration rather than desperation. Watch a master craftsman at work. See how their hands move with practiced ease. Their skill appears effortless because they have learned to work with their materials rather than against them. They understand the grain of the wood, the properties of the clay, the nature of the stone. This is effortless effort, maximum results with minimum resistance. Your mind is your primary tool for manifestation, yet most people use it like a sledgehammer when they need a scalpel. They attack their goals with brute mental force, creating internal pressure that blocks the very thing they're trying to create. They think constant worry about their desires shows dedication. They believe anxiety proves they care deeply enough. Here's what actually happens when you approach your desires with tension and strain. You create energetic resistance. You signal to the universe that you don't trust the process. You broadcast doubt disguised as determination. Your inner state of struggle magnetizes more struggle. Your energy of lack attracts more lack. Your vibration of not having ensures you keep not having. How many of you have noticed that the things you want most desperately seem to slip away, while the things you approach with calm confidence flow to you easily? This is not coincidence. This is law. When you plant a seed in your garden, what do you do next? Do you dig it up every day to check its progress? Do you pull on the sprouting plant to make it grow faster? Do you stand over it worrying and fretting about whether it will grow? Of course not. You water it, provide proper conditions, and trust the natural process. Your desires work the same way. Once you plant the seed of intention, your job is to maintain the proper inner conditions and trust the process. The proper conditions are not anxiety, desperation, and control. The proper conditions are calm confidence, grateful expectation, and relaxed persistence. But you've been conditioned to believe otherwise. You've been taught that struggle is noble, that ease is suspicious, that if something comes too easily, it can't be valuable. These beliefs are the bars of your prison. They keep you working harder instead of working smarter. They keep you pushing against doors that open inward. Right now, stop and examine your relationship with your deepest desires. Do you approach them with joyful anticipation or anxious striving? Do you think about them with excitement or worry? Do you feel expanded or contracted when you consider their fulfillment? Your honest answer reveals everything about why your desires or aren't manifesting. If thinking about what you want creates tension in your body, pressure in your chest, or anxiety in your mind, you are working against yourself. You are using your mental and emotional energy to push away the very thing you're trying to attract. This is not your fault. You've simply been using the wrong instruction manual for reality. You've been trying to achieve external success through external action alone, not understanding that external action without proper internal alignment is like trying to drive a car with the brakes on. The master key to manifestation is learning to want what you want from a place of joy rather than need, from confidence rather than desperation, from trust rather than fear. When you can think about your desires and feel light, expansive, and grateful, you have achieved the proper inner state for manifestation. But how do you develop this state when everything in your current experience seems to contradict what you want? How do you feel confident about outcomes you cannot control? How do you maintain calm when your desires seem urgent? The answer lies in understanding that your current external circumstances are simply the delayed reflection of your past inner state. What you see around you now is the result of how you were thinking and feeling weeks, months, or years ago. This means two things. First, you cannot judge the effectiveness of your current inner work by your current external circumstances. Second, every moment you spend in the proper inner state is creating your future external reality. This is why relaxation is not passive, it is the most powerful action you can take. When you relax into your desires, you stop creating resistance. When you stop creating resistance, you allow the natural flow of manifestation to work through you. When you allow this flow, what seemed difficult becomes effortless. Consider how often you interfere with natural processes in your life. You eat when you're not hungry, stay awake when you're tired, rush when you should wait, wait when you should act. You override your inner wisdom with mental concept about how things should be. You do the same thing with manifestation. Your inner wisdom knows exactly when and how your desires should manifest. It knows the perfect timing, the ideal circumstances, the right people, the proper sequence of events. But you override this wisdom with impatience. You decide you know better than the intelligence that coordinates the movement of galaxies. What would happen if you trusted this intelligence? What would happen if you relaxed your grip on outcomes and allowed them to unfold in their perfect timing? What would happen if you focused on maintaining the proper inner state and let the universe handle the details? You would become unstoppable, not through force, but through flow, not through strain, but through surrender, not through pushing, but through pulling, attracting what you want through the magnetic power of aligned consciousness. This requires a fundamental shift in how you approach your goals. Instead of asking, how can I make this happen? Start asking, how can I become the kind of person to whom this naturally happens? Instead of focusing on getting what you want, focus on becoming someone who already has it in consciousness. This is not about pretending or denial. This is about understanding that consciousness is the true substance of all creation. Everything you see in the physical world first existed as consciousness. Your desires exist right now in consciousness, waiting for you to align with them so completely that they have no choice but to manifest in your physical experience. The farmer doesn't create the wheat. The farmer simply provides conditions conducive to the wheat's growth and trust the natural process. You don't create your desires, they already exist in potential. You simply provide the proper inner conditions and trust the process of manifestation. Those conditions are surprisingly simple: relaxed certainty, grateful expectation, and joyful patience. Not the kind of certainty that demands proof, but the kind that rests in knowing. Not the kind of expectation that creates pressure, but the kind that creates space. Not the kind of patience that procrastinates, but the kind that persists with ease. When you master these inner conditions, you discover that manifestation is not something you do, it is something you allow. You don't force desired outcomes into existence. You become so aligned with them that they naturally flow into your experience. But this mastery requires practice. It requires daily cultivation of the proper inner state. It requires learning to catch yourself when you slip into old patterns of strain and struggle. It requires developing new mental and emotional habits that support rather than sabotage your desires. Most importantly, it requires understanding that this is not a one-time shift, but an ongoing process. You will not wake up tomorrow with perfect mastery over your inner state. You will catch yourself pushing when you should yield, forcing when you should flow. This is normal. This is part of the process. The question is not whether you will have moments of doubt, anxiety, or impatience. The question is how quickly you can recognize these states and return to alignment. The question is whether you can be gentle with yourself as you learn to work with natural law rather than against it. Your desires are not random ones. They are your soul's blueprint for growth. They are calling you to become the person capable of receiving them. This person already exists within you, waiting to be awakened. This person knows how to want without desperation, how to work without strain, how to receive without guilt. As you sit here now, you are at a crossroad. You can continue exhausting yourself with the old approach, pushing, forcing, striving against the current of natural law. Or you can begin learning to work with these laws, to align with these forces, to flow with this current. The choice is yours, and it will determine not just whether you get what you want, but who you become in the process. The person who learns to manifest through relaxed alignment becomes magnetic to all good things. They develop an unshakable confidence that transcends circumstance. They discover that they are not at the mercy of external conditions, but are the conscious creators of their experience. This is where true power lies, not in the ability to force outcomes, but in the ability to attract them through the quality of your being. When you understand this, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as the architect of your destiny. You stop waiting for permission from the external world and start giving yourself permission from within. All trust before they have proof, who acts as if their desires are already fulfilled before manifestation appears. This is not blind faith. This is intelligent alignment with how creation works. The foundation of conscious creation is this simple recognition. You are not separate from what you desire. Your desires and your ability to fulfill them come from the same source. When you align with this source through relaxation rather than resistance, through trust rather than control, through joy rather than desperation, you tap into creative powers that make the impossible inevitable. But alignment is just the beginning. Once you understand these principles, you must learn to apply them consistently, especially when life seems to be testing your understanding. You must learn to recognize the patterns that support manifestation and the patterns that sabotage it. You must learn to work skillfully with the natural rhythms of creation, the cycles of expansion and contraction that govern all manifestation. Every failure in your life has followed the same predictable pattern. Every success has followed another. Once you recognize these patterns, you gain the power to work with them instead of being victimized by them. Who here has noticed that challenges often come in clusters? Raise your hand if you've experienced periods where everything seemed to go wrong at once. Now raise your hand if you've also experienced periods where opportunities seem to flow effortlessly, one after another. You just witnessed proof of one of life's most reliable laws, the law of rhythmic cycles. Everything in nature moves in rhythms. The tides ebb and flow. The seasons change in perfect sequence. Your heart beats in rhythm. Your breath follows cycles of expansion and contraction. Your life follows the same pattern. Understanding this law changes everything about how you respond to both difficulties and opportunity. Most people fight against these natural rhythms. When challenges arise, they panic, thinking something has gone wrong. When opportunities appear, they grasp desperately, afraid the flow will stop. Both responses work against the natural current of manifestation. The wise person learns to surf these rhythms rather than fight them. They understand that periods of challenge are not punishment, they are preparation. They are the universe's way of expanding your capacity to receive what you've been asking for. Every difficult period is followed by a period of expansion, just as every winter is followed by spring. But here's what most people miss. How you respond during the contraction phase determines the quality and magnitude of the expansion phase that follows. If you respond to challenges with panic, resistance, and despair, you create energetic blocks that limit the good that can flow to you when the tide turns. If you respond with calm persistence, trust, and continued alignment with your desires, you prepare yourself to receive abundantly when the expansion begins. Consider the story of David, a man who lost his job, his relationship, and his apartment all within a 6-week period. By all external measures, his life was falling apart. But David had learned to recognize life's rhythms. Instead of collapsing into victim mentality, he asked the different question, what is this experience preparing me to receive? He used the period of challenge to clarify his deepest desires, to release old patterns that no longer served him, and to develop unshakable trust in his ability to create his reality. 18 months later, he was running his own successful business, in a relationship that fulfilled him completely, and living in a home he had only dreamed of before his apparent breakdown. This is not an unusual story. This is how life works when you align with its natural rhythms instead of fighting against them. The contraction phase is not your enemy. It is your preparation for expansion. It is life's way of clearing out what doesn't serve your highest good to make room for what does. But most people create unnecessary suffering during these preparation periods because they don't understand what's happening. They interpret challenges as evidence that their desires are not meant to manifest. They see obstacles as proof that they're on the wrong path. They lose faith precisely when faith is most needed. How do you maintain alignment during challenging periods? How do you keep your inner state positive when external circumstances seem negative? The answer lies in understanding the difference between responding and reacting. Reacting is immediate, emotional, and unconscious. When something challenging happens, you react from fear, anger, or despair. You make the external circumstance more important than your internal state. You give your power away to conditions rather than maintaining your power through consciousness. Responding is different. Responding is conscious, measured, and aligned with your deeper wisdom. When something challenging happens, you pause long enough to remember that this is temporary, that this is part of a larger pattern, that this is preparing you for something better. The person who masters manifestation learns to respond rather than react. They develop what I call relaxed persistence, the ability to maintain calm confidence in their desires, regardless of current appearances. They understand that external circumstances are always changing, but their inner state is their choice. This requires recognizing and eliminating the mental patterns that create resistance to natural flow. These patterns are so common, so automatic, that most people don't even realize they're creating them. Yet these patterns are the primary reason why desires remain unfulfilled. The first pattern is what I call evidence-based believing. This is when you make your belief in your desires dependent on seeing evidence of their manifestation. You only believe in your success when you can see it happening. You only trust the process when it's producing visible results. This pattern destroys manifestation because it puts the cart before the horse. Belief creates evidence, not the other way around. When you wait for evidence before believing, you never create the inner state necessary for manifestation. You remain trapped in current circumstances because you're not generating the consciousness that could change them. Show me someone whose desires consistently manifest, and I'll show you someone who believes before they see. The second destructive pattern is timeline tyranny. This is when you become attached to specific time frames for your desires fulfillment. You decide when things should happen and then judge everything that occurs against your artificial timeline. When manifestation doesn't occur according to your schedule, you conclude that it's not working. This pattern creates constant internal pressure and anxiety. It keeps you focused on what hasn't happened yet, instead of maintaining the positive inner state that attracts what you want. It makes you impatient with the natural unfolding process, causing you to abandon your desires just before they would have manifested. The universe operates on perfect timing, not human timing. Your desires will manifest when all necessary elements are in alignment, when you have developed the capacity to receive them, when the circumstances are optimal for their appearance. This timing is always perfect, even when it's not what you expected. The third pattern is method madness. This is when you become obsessed with figuring out exactly how your desires will manifest instead of focusing on maintaining the inner state that allows manifestation. You spend your mental energy trying to control the process instead of trusting it. This pattern creates tremendous internal tension because you're trying to do the universe's job instead of your own job. Your job is to get clear about what you want, align your inner state with having it, and take inspired action when it arises. The universe's job is to coordinate all the elements necessary for manifestation to occur. When you try to figure out the how, you limit manifestation to your current understanding and resources. You block possibilities that exist beyond your present awareness. You interfere with the natural intelligence that knows exactly how to bring your desires into form. The fourth pattern is comparison contamination. This is when you measure your progress against other people's results, timelines, or methods. You see someone else achieving what you want and conclude that you're behind, that you're doing something wrong, that your desires are taking too long. This pattern destroys your unique creative process. Your desires, your path, your timing are as individual as your fingerprints. Comparing your process to someone else's is like comparing a rose to an oak tree and concluding that one is wrong. Both are perfect expressions of their own nature. Every person's manifestation journey unfolds according to their own consciousness, their own lessons, their own perfect timing. When you honor your unique process, instead of comparing it to others, you accelerate your results because you stop creating resistance through judgment. The fifth pattern is perfectionism paralysis. This is when you delay taking action until you feel completely confident, until you have all the answers, until you can guarantee success. You wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect circumstances. This pattern prevents manifestation because it's based on the illusion that certainty comes before action. In reality, certainty develops through action. Confidence grows through experience. Clarity emerges through movement, not through thinking. The person who manifests consistently takes action from inspiration, not from certainty. They move forward with the best information they have available, knowing that the path will become clearer as they walk it. They understand that action generates more energy and information than planning ever could. Now contrast these destructive patterns with the mental habits of people who manifest effortless. These individuals have developed what I call allowing consciousness, a way of thinking and being that supports natural manifestation instead of blocking it. First, they practice outcome independence. They hold their desires with open hands rather than clenched fists. They want what they want without making their happiness dependent on getting it. They understand that their well-being comes from their connection to Source, not from external achievements. This doesn't mean they don't care about their desire. It means they care from a place of joy rather than desperation, from excitement rather than anxiety, from trust rather than fear. This inner state is magnetic to manifestation because it contains no resistance. Second, they maintain process faith. They trust the unfolding of their desires, even when they can't see the next step. They understand that manifestation happens behind the scenes, long before it appears in physical form. They have faith in the process itself, not just in their ability to control outcome. This faith allows them to remain calm during apparent delays, patient during challenging periods, and confident during uncertainty. They know that their desires are always in motion toward them, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Third, they practice inspired action. They don't force themselves to take action from obligation or desperation. They wait for genuine inspiration and then act decisively when it arises. They understand the difference between actions that flow from alignment and actions that come from resistance. This approach makes their efforts more effective because they're working with their natural energy rather than against it. They accomplish more by doing less because their actions are perfectly timed and aligned with their desires' manifestation. Fourth, they cultivate grateful expectation. They expect their desires to manifest not from entitlement, but from understanding how natural law works. They are grateful for their desires even before they appear because they know that wanting something means having the ability to attract. This combination of expectation and gratitude creates a powerful magnetic field. Expectation draws their desires forward, while gratitude acknowledges their reality in consciousness. Together, these states create irresistible attraction. Fifth, they master flexible persistence. They persist with their desires while remaining flexible about methods, timing, and specific details. They hold the essence of what they want while allowing the form to evolve. They're committed to their destination while remaining open to different routes. This balance prevents them from becoming attached to specific outcomes while maintaining the focus necessary for manifestation. They persist long enough for their desires to manifest while adapting to new information and opportunities as they arise. These mental habits don't develop overnight. They require conscious cultivation and consistent practice. Most importantly, they require recognizing when you've slipped into old patterns and gently redirecting your attention back to alignment. The key is developing what I call pattern awareness, the ability to catch yourself repeating resistance before it builds momentum. This requires honest self-observation without self-judgment. When you notice yourself falling into evidence-based believing, timeline tyranny, method madness, comparison contamination, or perfectionism paralysis, you simply acknowledge the pattern and choose again. This process becomes easier with practice. Eventually, you develop such sensitivity to your inner state that you can feel resistance the moment it begins to form. You can sense when you're working with natural law versus fighting against it. You can distinguish between the energy of allowing and the energy of forcing. But awareness alone is not enough. You must also have practical methods for returning to alignment when you notice you've drifted into resistance. You need specific techniques for maintaining your desired inner state regardless of external circumstance. You need daily practices that strengthen your manifestation muscles and keep you connected to your natural creative power. The good news is that these practices are simpler than most people imagine. They don't require hours of complex rituals or elaborate visualization techniques. They require consistency more than complexity, alignment more than effort, quality more than quantity. When you master these inner patterns and practices, when you learn to recognize and work with life's natural rhythms, when you eliminate the mental habits that create resistance, you become what I call a conscious creator. You stop being at the mercy of circumstances and start becoming the orchestrator of your experience. But mastery requires more than understanding principles. It requires daily application, consistent practice, and practical tools that you can use in real-world situations. It requires specific disciplines that keep you aligned with your desires and connected to your creative power, regardless of what's happening around you. Every morning you wake up, you have a choice. You can start your day as a victim of circumstances, reacting to whatever life presents, or you can start your day as a conscious creator, establishing the inner conditions that attract what you desire. How many of you check your phone within the first 10 minutes of waking up? Keep your hands up if this immediately puts you in reactive mode, responding to other people's agendas before you've even clarified your own intentions for the day. This single habit reveals why most people remain trapped in patterns of struggle and limitation. They surrender their creative power before they've even gotten out of bed. They allow external conditions to determine their inner state instead of using their inner state to influence external conditions. The master of manifestation begins each day differently. Before engaging with the outer world, they establish their inner world. Before reacting to circumstances, they create their energetic foundation. Before checking what everyone else is doing, they clarify what they intend to experience. This is not about following a rigid morning routine. This is about understanding that the first few minutes after waking are the most powerful moments of your entire day. Your consciousness is most malleable, most receptive, most aligned with infinite possibility. How you use these moments determines the quality of everything that follows. The first practice is what I call conscious awakening. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone or jumping into mental activity, you take 3 minutes to simply be present with your desire. Not to plan how to achieve them, not to worry about whether they'll manifest, but to feel the joy of having them already fulfilled in consciousness. During these 3 minutes, you rest in the feeling of your desires as accomplished fact. You don't visualize complex scenarios or repeat affirmations. You simply relax into the inner knowing that what you want is already yours in the realm of consciousness, waiting for the perfect moment to appear in physical form. This practice establishes what I call your energetic baseline for the day. Instead of starting from neutral or negative emotional states, you begin from a place of fulfilled desire. Instead of having to climb uphill energetically all day, you start from the mountaintop and maintain that elevation. But conscious awakening is only the beginning. Throughout your day, you encounter countless situations that test your ability to maintain alignment. You receive news that challenges your faith. You face delays that try your patience. You meet people who reflect your doubts back to you. This is where the second practice becomes crucial. Midday realignment. Every 4 hours, you take 60 seconds to check your inner state. Not to judge it, but to consciously choose it. If you notice you've slipped into worry, frustration, or doubt, you gently return to the feeling of your desires fulfilled. This practice prevents small misalignments from becoming major energetic blocks. Instead of allowing negative states to build momentum throughout the day, you catch them early and redirect your energy back toward what you want to create. The technique is simple. You ask yourself, how am I feeling right now about my desires? If the answer is anything other than positive expectation, you take 30 seconds to return to the feeling of already having what you want, not through force or struggle, but through gentle redirection of attention. Most people underestimate the power of this practice because it seems too simple. They're looking for complex techniques and elaborate rituals. But manifestation happens through small, consistent alignments, not through dramatic intervention. The person who maintains positive alignment with their desires for 60 seconds every 4 hours is more powerful than the person who does 1 hour of visualization once a week. The third practice addresses the most challenging part of manifestation, maintaining alignment when external evidence contradicts your desires. This is when your faith is tested, when your understanding is challenged, when your commitment is measured. I call this practice evidence transcendence. When you encounter circumstances that seem to oppose your desires, financial pressures, when you're manifesting abundance, relationship conflicts, when you're attracting love, health challenges, when you're creating vitality, you use these moments as opportunities to strengthen your manifestation muscle. Instead of seeing contradictory evidence as proof that your desires aren't manifesting. You see it as the last layer of old energy clearing away to make room for the new. Instead of losing faith when things look worse before they get better, you understand that this apparent worsening is often the final stage before breakthrough. The practice works like this. When challenging circumstances arise, you immediately remind yourself that external conditions are always the reflection of past inner states, not current ones. What you're seeing now is the result of how you were thinking and feeling in the past. What you're thinking and feeling now is creating your future experience. This understanding allows you to respond to challenges from a place of power rather than victimhood. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this teaching me about maintaining alignment?" Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence against your desires, you see them as opportunities to demonstrate your faith in their fulfillment. But daily practices extend beyond formal technique. They include how you speak about your desires, how you think about your current circumstances, how you respond to other people's opinions about your goals. The fourth practice is aligned communication. This means you speak about your desires as if they're already in motion toward you, not as distant hopes or impossible dreams. You talk about them with confident expectation, not desperate pleading. You share them with people who support your vision, not with those who will discourage your faith. This practice is crucial because your words have creative power. Every time you speak about your desires from doubt, you energize doubt. Every time you discuss them from fear, you magnetize fear. Every time you describe them as difficult or unlikely, you make them more difficult and unlikely. The aligned person speaks differently. They say, "When this manifests," instead of "if this happens." They describe challenges as temporary conditions, not permanent limitations. They talk about their desires with the same certainty they'd use to discuss tomorrow's sunrise. This doesn't mean you become unrealistic or ignore practical consideration. It means you understand that your words are tools of creation, not just communication. You use language that supports your manifestation rather than sabotages it. The fifth practice is inspired action recognition. This is the ability to distinguish between actions that flow from alignment and actions that come from anxiety. Not all action supports manifestation. Frantic activity often creates more resistance than helpful progress. Inspired action feels different from anxious action. It arises naturally from inner prompting rather than external pressure. It feels expansive rather than contractive. It generates energy rather than depleting it. It moves you toward your desires with ease rather than struggle. The practice involves checking your motivation before taking any significant action related to your desires. Ask yourself, am I doing this from inspiration or desperation? Am I moving toward what I want or running away from what I don't want? Does this action feel aligned with my highest good? If the action feels forced, strained, or desperate, if it feels natural, exciting, and aligned, proceed with confidence. This discrimination develops over time as you become more sensitive to the difference between inspired and uninspired act. But perhaps the most important daily practice is what happens in the evening, during the transition from conscious activity to sleep. This is when you review your day, not to judge your performance, but to appreciate your progress and set the stage for continued manifestation while you rest. The sixth practice is evening completion. Before sleep, you spend 5 minutes acknowledging any moments during the day when you maintained alignment with your desire. You appreciate yourself for choosing positive thoughts over negative ones, for responding rather than reacting, for maintaining faith despite contrary appearances. Then you release any moments when you slipped into doubt, worry, or resist, not through self-criticism, but through gentle acknowledgement and conscious choice to return to alignment. You forgive yourself for being human while recommitting to your desires and your power to manifest. Finally, you set your intention for your subconscious mind to continue working on your desires while you sleep. You go to bed feeling grateful for your desires, confident in their manifestation, and trusting in the perfect unfolding of their appearance in your life. This evening practice ensures that your last thoughts before sleep support your manifestation rather than sabotage it, since your subconscious mind processes and integrates your daily experiences during sleep, ending each day in alignment with your desires programs your deeper mind to continue creating conditions for their fulfillment. These six practices: conscious awakening, midday realignment, evidence transcendence, aligned communication, inspired action recognition, and evening completion, form the foundation of what I call lifestyle manifestation. This is when manifestation becomes not something you do, but something you are. But implementing these practices requires addressing the most common obstacle to consistent application: the belief that you don't have time for inner work. You tell yourself you're too busy, too stressed, too overwhelmed to spend time on alignment practices. This belief reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how manifestation works. You think time spent on inner alignment is time taken away from practical action. In reality, time spent maintaining proper inner state makes your practical actions infinitely more effective. 10 minutes of action taken from perfect alignment accomplishes more than 10 hours of action taken from anxiety and desperation. One decision made from clarity and confidence produces better results than hundreds of decisions made from confusion and fear. The person who maintains alignment doesn't need to work harder, they work smarter. They don't need more time, they need better energy. They don't need more opportunities, they need greater receptivity to the opportunities already present. This is why the busiest, most successful people often have the most consistent inner practices. They understand that maintaining alignment is not a luxury, it's a necessity. They know that their inner state is their most valuable asset, more important than their time, their money, or their connection. Now, as we near the end of our time together, you face the same choice that confronts every person who learns these principles. You can nod your head in agreement, feel inspired for a few days, and then return to your old patterns of struggle and limitation. Or you can begin implementing these practices today and start creating the life you've always desired. The difference between these two choices is the difference between temporary motivation and lasting transformation. Motivation fades when inspiration wears off. Transformation occurs when you consistently apply what you've learned, regardless of how you feel. Which will you choose? Will you leave here with good intentions that dissolve under the pressure of daily life? Or will you begin today to establish the daily practices that turn ordinary people into master manifestors? The answer lies not in your words, but in your action, not in your intentions, but in your implementation, not in your understanding, but in your application. Every moment you spend aligned with your desires is an investment in your future experience. Every time you choose positive expectation over doubt, you strengthen your manifestation ability. Every day you maintain these practices, you become more magnetic to all good things. But you must begin today, not tomorrow when you feel more ready, not next week when you have more time, not next month when your circumstances improve. Today, with whatever time you have, whatever knowledge you possess, whatever circumstances surround you. The universe is not waiting for you to become perfect before it responds to your desire. It's waiting for you to become consistent in your alignment, persistent in your practices, and unwavering in your faith that what you desire is already yours in consciousness. Remember how we began. Why do you exhaust yourself chasing what could flow to you effortlessly? Now you know the answer. Now you understand the principles. Now you have the practices. The question is no longer whether these principles work. The question is whether you will work with these principles. The question is no longer whether manifestation is possible. The question is whether you will manifest the consistency to apply what you've learned. Your desires are not asking you to become a different person. They're asking you to become more of who you already are. They're calling forth your natural power, your inherent creativity, your birthright as a conscious being in a universe that responds to consciousness. This power has always been within you. These abilities have always been available to you. This knowledge has always been seeking you. Today, you stop seeking and start being. You stop trying and start allowing. You stop forcing and start flowing. The person who masters relaxed manifestation becomes unstoppable not through effort, but through alignment. Not through pushing, but through pulling. Not through desperation, but through demonstration of unwavering faith in their creative power. This person wakes up each morning knowing that this day will bring them closer to their desire. They move through challenges with calm confidence, knowing that every obstacle is preparing them for greater good. They end each day in gratitude, knowing that their consistent alignment is creating miracles behind the scenes. This person could be you. This life could be yours. This mastery could begin today. The choice is yours. The power is yours. The time is now. What you do with this knowledge in the next 24 hours will determine whether this information becomes transformation or simply another inspiring idea that changes nothing. Your desires are waiting. Your life is waiting. Your destiny is waiting. The only question remaining is, are you ready to stop waiting and start creating? The answer to that question will be revealed not by what you say when you leave here, but by what you do when you wake up tomorrow morning. Will you reach for your phone, or will you reach for your power? Your new life begins with that choice. Make it count.